A friend of the family was away on vacation. They're a couple, and they're older. They were away on vacation with their grandkids, had a great opportunity to vacation with them. And prior to leaving for vacation, they went over to their neighbor's house and asked their neighbor if they wouldn't mind to just kind of watch over things, make sure everything's okay while they're away, as neighbors often do. And this couple, this family, gave the neighbor a key to their house. The reason they gave him a key, not just because they trusted them, but they were having a kind of a side job contractor come in and just do a little bit of work here and there, some touch-up things, a little bit of remodeling, just to kind of make sure everything's okay, touch base with this gentleman that was doing the work, and just check up on it. Well, a couple days into their vacation, they got a phone call from the neighbor. And the neighbor had said, listen guys, I think you're missing some things. You're missing your TV. Looks like some pretty obvious possessions that any house would have are gone, and no work has been done. It looks like maybe you've had some things stolen from you. So it was just a couple days into their vacation, and the family really didn't want to leave from vacation. They were with their grandkids, and that is very, as every grandparent knows, very privileged time. And so the neighbor realized this and asked, hey, is there anything I can do? I'd be happy to do anything to help and make sure that you guys can at least enjoy the vacation and don't have a whole lot of stuff to come back to deal with this. And so the neighbor went ahead and called a locksmith, had the locks changed for the family, went through the house every day just to make sure everything was okay. All because they had this key. They were able to do this. In our gospel today, we read that our Lord, God, also gave a key. He gave this key to a creature, to a human person, to Peter, to do much the same thing. He said, Peter, I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Which is in essence our Lord saying that when the time comes and I ascend to the Father, when I am away, I give you authority to watch over things. I give you authority to act in my name. You, Peter, have the keys to the kingdom of heaven. It's much like a neighborly thing to do. Except, as we know, this wasn't just any key. And this wasn't to just any person. This was to Peter, who would eventually deny and betray our Lord, who would run away, who would constantly miss the mark. To Peter, who was prone to sin. To Peter, who was prone to messing things up. To Peter, who was prone to not getting it. This is who our Lord gave the key to. To one of us, to someone who has fallen. And the story, while beautiful, in the reality of it, we know is not always so beautiful and so incredible. The reality of it is actually an insane action, an insane gift of God. We hear from St. Paul, oh, the depth of wisdom of God. In our second reading today, oh, how inscrutable and unsearchable his ways. But let's be honest. The humanity of the church can be a pretty terrifying and terrible thing. How many people in our world today look at the Catholic Church? How many Catholics, us, look at the Catholic Church and at times we're disappointed with the church, at times we're disgusted with the church. We think off the top of our heads. Many of us remember in 2002 when the priest scandals broke. And we heard about a small number of priests, but any number, it doesn't matter, any number of priests abusing their power and abusing children The humanity of the church showing forth. We remember hearing about all these stories that for decades the bishops, not all, but many of the bishops, acting out of self-preservation, selfishness, and trying to cover up these scandals. The humanity of the bishops showing forth. We read at times about pastors and parish staffs that steal money. We know from the history books that we've had some pretty terrible popes. But we don't just have to kind of look for headline stories. We can also look in our parish and see the insanity of this act of God passing on the keys to the kingdom of heaven to Peter, to his church. We can look at ourselves. We can look at myself. We can look at ourselves and see our humanity oftentimes doesn't match up with what the church is supposed to be. How oftentimes we are disappointed with each other. How many times have we been frustrated and angry, and we've lashed out and we've gossiped and we have hurt the people that sit in these very pews with us and pray with us? And humanity shows forth. It is easy, and we can always find blemishes in the church. And there will always be blemishes in the church because there will always be humanity in the church. But there is not just a blemished humanity in the church. It is not only Peter's betrayal and Peter's denial. It is not only our frustrations and our lashing out and our gossip and our sinfulness. There is also virtue. There's also beauty. There's also amazing things that do happen that don't make headlines. Last year, I recall we had a number of young people that had this awesome opportunity. We went to World Youth Day in Poland. We had a very haunting and harrowing opportunity in that time over there in Poland to visit the concentration camp of Auschwitz. And we've all heard from when we were young people learning about the Holocaust and the Second World War, that nearly 1 million people were brutally murdered in this one concentration camp, let alone the others that existed. But this one, the most famous one, the most brutal one, Auschwitz, nearly 1 million people were murdered. But the things that we're not taught, the things that we'll rarely hear about, are not the brutality, the worst that humanity has to offer. We rarely hear about the best that humanity offered in that harrowing time in Auschwitz. The thousands of stories about sacrifice, the thousands of stories about concern from between one prisoner and another, the thousands of stories of compassion, of encouragement. And I'm reminded of one in particular, of a saint, St. Maximilian Kolbe, and he was at that time Father Maximilian Kolbe, just a simple parish priest. And he was put into Auschwitz. And he was put with a group of prisoners as they were all divided out into groups, and every day they had roll call. And part of the purpose of roll call was to make sure that no one had escaped. And everyone knew in Auschwitz that if anyone even attempted to escape, those in your group would be subject to 10 random people picked out and put to death, executed, in a very brutal way. So one day at roll call in St. Maximilian's group, the guards are going up and down and someone had tried to escape. And so the guards picked out 10 people. You. And they were all sentenced to death. One of them being a husband and father who wanted to see his children again, who wanted to see his wife again. And so he asked to be spared. And the guard said, absolutely not. And then the unthinkable happened. Father Maximilian Kolbe steps out of line, which you never did. And he said, I will take his place. And the guards, completely astonished, agreed to it. Father Maximilian Kolbe and 9 others were sentenced to death by one of the worst kinds of death. Death by starvation in cell block 11 is what it was called. They were crammed into a room, and they were all killed for lack of food and water. And by the recordings of all the guards who were there, then it is recorded. Father Maximilian encouraged and prayed with and helped those like him were dying in that moment. It's easy to be disgusted, to hate and be disappointed, and we should be disgusted and be disappointed and hate the worst that humanity has to offer. But humanity also has some of the greatest things to offer. The Holocaust shows that, and guys, Holy Mother Church shows that. Holy Mother Church shows that we have, yes, the worst examples, but we also have the greatest examples, because humanity is a part of this project of the kingdom of heaven. There are times that we can be so disgusted. There are times that we can be so disappointed. There are times that we can be so angry with the church, with people in the church, that we're tempted to walk away, that we're tempted to say, forget it. Do not walk away. Do not walk away. One, be a part of what is the greatest, the treasure of the church. Be examples like St. Maximilian Kolbe. Be examples of the thousands, the millions of stories that never get told, never make headlines, of sacrifice, compassion, and concern, in holiness, in virtue. But when you encounter the worst of what humanity has to offer by someone who calls themselves Christian, remember today's gospel. Remember today's gospel. Remember Peter. It was he that received the keys to the kingdom of heaven. A sinner, one of the worst, in fact. A betrayer of Jesus Christ. But the gifts of God are irrevocable. The keys are not being taken away. They're given to us in spite of us. They're given to Peter in spite of Peter. And what did our Lord say immediately after that? He said, to you I give the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and on you I will build my church. This is the church. It's not always pretty, but it is the church. We have the keys, and that is not changing.